doesn't get hotter than this. We have ignition. What's up?
Wow, you guys actually... really liked the Pokemon thing, so let's double down and do another. I feel like that TikTok audio where it's like, you want to listen to my theories? No one ever wants to listen to my theories. But it's the opposite, because people usually want to listen to the theories. I didn't think they want to listen to this, but here we are. When trying to think about what to do for this episode, I really leaned into just the lore and story of the game. I didn't want to go into too many Fakemon yet because I still want to wait until I commission real art, because as you'll see, what I'm capable of will not do them justice. I know you want to see nice Fakemon art that professional artists do that I hire, but all I can provide are Omega Flowey knockoffs via Photoshop. And that's what I have in store for you. Don't worry, I'm not generating anything. I'd never stoop so low to do that. I'd rather make a monstrosity via Photoshop. But regardless, an important part of Pokemon games are the story themselves, what's going on as you complete the gym challenge, and what the evil people in the region are doing. Some of you already had a pretty good idea on what I'm going to talk about in the comments of the last episode, but no spoilers. I figured it best if I just kind of tell you the story of this perfect Pokemon game, and how the story changes as you progress. And who better to tell you this than the professor of the region? Meet Professor Hemlock, named after the PA state tree, the Eastern Hemlock. I see her as a field researcher, someone always out in nature looking at the local flora and Pokemon. Think Dina Soulsteeper from Magic the Gathering, but not a dryad. Just like a happy-go-lucky, nerdy, somewhat clumsy nature field researcher. But even though she's going to be telling you this, I'm just going to use my voice. Because if I did a whole video in this voice, I think it would be weird. So the game starts and you, the player, are finally old enough to start your Pokemon journey. And you begin the game by picking your starting town. Any town in the region. I've always liked the concept that if a Pokemon game is open world, you can start from anywhere. Now, I hear you. What about the professor who gives you your Pokemon? Well, in this region, gym leaders are not only the strongest trainer in their town, but they're also seen as community leaders. They're almost like the de facto mayor, and since they're on the forefront of Pokemon battling, they also handle the send-off of their respective trainers, where once a year on the first day of summer, of-age kids are given their first Pokemon and sent to meet other places. When the tradition was first initiated, this is how we mostly learned about the Faber region, but now we keep the tradition going so younger folk can explore the region, find new friends and new Pokemon, and even figure out what they'd want to do and where they'd like to live, whether or not that includes battling. It's just a good experience. But since the gym leader usually handles the send-off, they only have one type of Pokemon available, whatever their team has bred the most that year. In essence, whatever starting town you pick determines the starter you get, and the starter is based on that town's typing. So if you picked Pintry City, you're going to get an ice type as your starter. Then the player starts their journey, but they can't leave town just yet. To truly leave on your Faber expedition, you have to prove yourself against your town's own gym. They are your first and last battle before challenging the Pokemon League, and the only structured gym battles in the entire game. You train around the local area and wildlife until you think you're strong enough to take on the gym leader. They modify their team to meet your level, and if you beat them, you're given your league badge case and allowed to start your Farbor expedition. The Farbor transport system is able to bus you to any location that you've already been to, but to keep the spirit of the expedition, you do have to get there yourself first. Finally, other than looking for gyms, each town has their own side quest, something to help the local gym leader and help the town itself. So while the majority of this story is this gym expedition and helping the towns, at the same time, of course, trouble is brewing in the region. Time to introduce you to the legendaries and how they play into everything. In the Farbor region, the seasons are changed by the ever-fighting Volfloss and Volnix. Welcome to that Omega Flowey look-alike hell that I mentioned earlier. Two modern myths. These Pokemon have a strange power over the climate of the region. One grows in power while the other weakens, and the seasons change with their strength. But once one of the Pokemon reach their apex, they themselves begin to weaken, and their foe grows ever stronger. They cycle like this year after year. Volfloss, a fire grass type, a Pokemon whose strength brings summer and warmth, and Volnix, an ice grass type, a Pokemon whose strength brings winter and cold. Both of them are very important, as the region must cycle with them. These two legendaries are based on the Oak King and the Holly King, a type of deity found in many religions, especially in Neo-Pagan and Wiccan traditions. The temperature changes with them. The idea of the Oak King and the Holly King is similar to what I just described. The Oak King and Holly King are engaged in constant battle, and the Oak King's figure grows in strength and gains ground in the battle, bringing summer. But eventually he falters, and the Holly King triumphs, which brings winter. Now, I should mention, Volfloss and Volnix are not your box art legendaries. That's reserved for two other Pokemon. Think of them more like the Lake Trio from Gen 4. As far as their actual designs go, because look, this is my best approximation in Photoshop, they wouldn't look like this in the actual game. Volflox and Volnix are based off of red foxes and gray foxes respectively, types of animals that are all over PA. If there were real art of these guys, Volfloss would look like a stylized red fox with a crown of twigs, a cape of cardinal flowers and green dragon leaves. And Volnix would look like a stylized gray fox with a crown of ice and a cape of pine cones and pine needles. They'd be about the size of a dire wolf, similar in size in fact to the Sword and Shield legendaries. Now that that explanation is out of the way, what's the trouble brewing in this region? Well, it's the first day of summer, and weather should be warming more and more. But for some reason, the weather has stagnated ever since late spring. News outlets have been looking into it, trying to see if it's a sort of natural evolution. But there's been no sign of either Volfloss or Volnix in the region, who are usually causing trouble this time of year. Worry is growing amongst the region, as if the weather doesn't resolve soon, much of the wildlife could begin to wither. Trees and many other plants need the hot weather to regulate themselves, and if it stays this stagnated temperature, the crops, flora, and fauna will all suffer. Right now, the region is just hoping that this blows over and goes back to normal. In other news, oil tycoon Maltus Morum is closing in on a deal to sell acres of land behind Maloon City to further develop his drilling lands. You play the game as normal, but after collecting your third badge, more news erupts. Ambridge Town reports worse and worse tremors in the region, leaving many townsfolk scared for their well-being and having trouble sleeping. All Gym League activity is temporarily put on pause until this is figured out, as the gym leader of Ambridge Town is needed to solve this crisis. With nothing better to do and wanting to get back to your Gym League experience, you investigate the caves outside town, and you find some Morum Co. employees testing out a drill in the deepest section. They try to hide it, but you beat them in a Pokemon battle. But more Morum Co. employees show up, until Maltus Morum himself arrives at the scene with a news crew. The news crew begin pressing Maltus on why his company is drilling into the mountain, and he responds, "What is this? I told you boys to test these tools far away from any town. What if you hurt someone? And fighting this child? I'm horribly disappointed in you all." He then turns to the news crew. "To the people of the Farbor region, who I'm sure are worried, I apologize. It seems some people in my employ lacked the foresight to safeguard your trust, but ultimately, they're my men. This falls on me. You have my word that I will right this wrong, and to show good faith, I'll donate 10% of all profits this year to ecological safety causes. All of the Moramco employees are shuttled out of the caves. Everything goes back relatively to normal, and the Gym League resumes activity. Later still in the game, when you visit Empia City for the first time, you meet Professor Hemlock, being thrown out of City Hall. You help pick up her things and talk to her, and you learn that they've been looking into the change in the weather, and while in the process found that it must be related to the missing legendaries. Volflox and Volnix always change the season with them. If they're missing, the seasons won't change. But not only that, if the Moramco oil sale goes through, it could leak into the Vitavis River, threatening the entire region. They tried to bring these concerns up to the mayor of Empia City, but the mayor thought she was raving mad, and her ramblings could only hurt the economy. She resolves that she's still going to try to fight the best fight she can as a researcher, and in the meantime thanks you for hearing her out. They then give you a choice of 3 Pokemon. This is when you receive your traditional starter trio, already at its middle stage evolution. Near the end of the game, after collecting 7 gym badges, disaster strikes. The news comes on, warning everyone that the Maloon City oil fields leaked into the Vitavis River, and the whole waterfront is soaking oil towards Claymos Town. If that oil reaches the groundwater of those fields, all of the food for the region could be in jeopardy, not to mention all the affected Pokemon who live in that river along the way. The professors of the region are struggling to find a solution, and you decide to head to Moramco HQ, located just between Maloon City and Empia City, to see if you can help. Battling your way through the facility, you make it to the lab, where you find them, Volfloss and Volnix, snarling at each other, held in opposite ends of a sealed room. You free them both, but in their anger, they fight you in a double battle. After winning, they've calmed down and escaped the laboratory. The region watches as they bark frantically along the river. The seasons begin to sweep, but it's not enough. However, their barks are not just to the land. Their barks are up and around, to the other legendaries of the region. The sun flares, and the ground begins to shake, and 2 legendaries, the box arts, emerge. Solvern and Untelis. Welcome to more Omega Flowey Photoshop Hellville. These are your big box art legendaries, both of them based after the triune god and goddess in some forms of neo-paganism. Essentially, they're manifestations of their respective elements, the god being air and fire, and the goddess being earth and water. So let's go over these Pokemon, starting with Solvern. Now, a lot of inspiration for this Pokemon was taken by the fact that there's a match made in heaven in lore's sake. Often, the god is drawn or interpreted as a horned god, many folk using deer antlers as inspiration. And the Pennsylvania state animal is the white-tailed deer, a deer that I see at least once a week in the suburbs. So this is the design I cooked up, but it's not quite this. My actual design idea would be a cryptid version of a Pegasus. Instead of a horse and eagle, a deer and grouse, the PA state bird. This guy would be a fire flying type, and the actual Pokemon would look like this but be more stylized and have a fire-adjacent color scheme, essentially being the embodiment of the spirit of animals and the sun. And don't be too surprised when I tell you this is the easier of the pair to explain, because now we're moving on to Untelis. I could not, for the life of me, figure out how to Photoshop this together, so instead I made a mood board for you. But hear me out, this Pokemon could look beautiful. The energies of the goddess are water and earth, and many people associate the moon with the goddess as well. Taking all of this into account, I looked up the PA state flower and found that it's the mountain laurel. Looking at the mountain laurel, it reminded me of the upside down jellyfish. I was already ecstatic because like, cool, earth, water, right there. But the upside down jellyfish is the Cassiopeia, named after the constellation, which is in turn named after a Greek queen, who was said to be very beautiful, and vain, but who cares about that? So imagine a beautiful floral creature based off of this jellyfish with stars in there as well. This beautiful, elegant, hauntingly beautiful. But I did mention when I started this that they're based off of triune gods. So what does that mean? Often in neo-pagan beliefs, these figures are seen in 3 ways: a young, grown, and old version, representing the passing of time and the passing of seasons. You may have even heard of the maiden, mother, and crone. That's the goddess version, the god being youth, father, and sage. None of these versions are less than, just showing different stages of life, and I wanted to represent that in these Pokemon as well. So the legendaries themselves are 3-stage evolutions, basically being the same thing but getting older. Alright, now that we're caught up, these legendaries in their sage and crone forms appear and stop the river flow, drawing the oil back up into the drilling fields and sealing the drills into the ground, trees beginning to grow in their place. In a desperate attempt to save his oil fields, Maltus Morum stands his ground and tries to attack the legendaries, but you fight him back. Once defeated, he's taken into custody, and in the months that follow, him and the mayor are arrested for collusion. It turns out that charity fund was just funneling money back into Morum Co. With the story defeated, you collect your 8th badge at your starting town and move on to the championship. After the story has been completed, all 4 legendaries can be found roaming throughout the region, but the 2 box arts can only be found in their first evolutionary stage, the Youth and the Maiden. And that's the story of my perfect region. It's more so leaning into the Wiccan aspects of me, but I think it's a match made in heaven. When thinking about the themes of nature and protectionism, that idea that solving Gen 6? I don't remember. But I hope you like it. Now that I know people actually give a shit about this series, I'll definitely be working with some artists to get some Fakemon designs out next. Because I guess the next part of this series is to talk about the starters, the starting town Pokemon, and some other various Pokemon filled throughout. But we might need to wait a bit for that video, because that'll be a lot of art to commission.